All right. Well, welcome back to my channel here. I think I'm going to stick with the theme of really addressing these videos to some version of my 20-year-old self. And today's theme revolves around a piece of advice that I would give regarding taking criticism well, essentially. And not even criticism, but being able to receive the notion that you can do better. And that to be able to, whether you tell yourself you can do better or somebody who cares about you is genuinely telling you you can do better, that does not mean that you're not good enough as you are. Those 2 points are not mutually exclusive. However, then we have to be aware of the human psyche and our natural tendencies in regards to the process of self-improvement and growth. Challenging ourselves and also rewarding ourselves is part of that process. So again, if you didn't know, this is an astrology-based channel, and I'm always going to reference, astrology is tied into everything. It's literally the science of the orchestration of all of creation is what astrology kind of encompasses. So in everybody's chart, you can see different aspects that could be considered strengths or harmonious aspects in a chart regarding the alignments of different planets. Or you could see areas that are potential challenges or tension points that are asking for kind of energetic and psychospiritual resolvement. So in our lives, how do we go about this? How do we go about doing better without kind of beating ourselves up at the same time, without rejecting who we are, right? One of the core kind of wounds in the human ego is this idea of not being good enough and wanting to prove yourself in various ways and bend over backwards just to prove to yourself and others that you are good enough, because deep down you don't think you are, and you don't even know that that's what you think. So then we end up in this place where you don't actually try to even improve yourself, because the idea that you could do better makes you feel less than. So how do we reconcile these two things? So again, strengths and weaknesses. A basic example in a birth chart could be a trine aspect is an angle between two planets, which allows for a very harmonious relationship between the integration of their energies and their communication. Like sun trine moon, the attributes of the sun and the attributes of the moon in that person just kind of are in agreement and naturally flow. Versus a square, this 90 degrees sharp angle between two planets could manifest as something of a challenge, where the energy flow between those two aspects, there's a bit of a block, there's a bit of a mystery, there's something unconscious, there's something that's asking to be resolved and figured out, right? And there always is. There always is a route. It's just like finding an alternate route through traffic. You'll get to your destination. It's just not going to be the direct, straight line. As we know, life is not a straight line. It's a bending river. So everybody has both of these things for the most part. Some people's charts are more balanced. Some people have extreme strengths and abilities, and then some tougher things to figure out in another area. So the answer to everybody's question in this regard, like how do we do better, and how do we address our weaknesses, and also celebrate and emphasize our strengths, which are oftentimes, I believe, our real gifts that we need to share. Um, so I think it's a balance. I think it's a balance. Like as a kid in school, I'm not going to get into all my issues with the education system, but, there are different classes and different subjects. Some kids are just like very well balanced in that they kind of can be comfortable in every subject. Some kids can do calculus and they can do, poetry. They can do both. I was always much more language focused and struggled with like mathematics. That was always more difficult, where I could just write without even thinking. Anything that involved writing, I could just do. So here's the thing. Let's say I focus too much on my weakness and just constantly put all this effort into doing better in mathematics and not really paying attention to my natural gift for expression and writing, my confidence, especially as a kid, would probably likely suffer, because I'd be constantly banging my head against a wall doing this thing that doesn't come naturally to me to do better. Now, at the same time, like, you put effort into something, even if it's something you're not really gifted at, you will improve. Like, willpower works. But people have different thresholds, that, like, at the end of the day, you could try to be the number one tennis player in the world, and, everybody has their certain athletic, physical limitations, and really maybe you could be the best that you could possibly be. You might not be Roger Federer. He has natural talents. However, if Roger Federer didn't make the most use of his talents and also put that work in, he wouldn't have become the best player in the world either. So you can go too far trying to hone in on the weaknesses to balance them. But then if you completely ignore the weaknesses and just go full into the strengths and just ignore the weaknesses, you can go a long way depending on what your talents are. Some people have just like savant level abilities that can just open doors for them, and they can just kind of like ignore everything else and have this very specified path. But as human beings, we are very multidimensional, and you can't really ignore any core aspects of being a human. Each one of the planets represents a very core aspect of being a human, right? And if you're not fully expressing any of them, that's like a missing link in who you are and who you naturally want to express. So even if you have all these gifts and talents that kind of come easily to you, and you follow that and maximize what you can by just focusing on that, that's great. But eventually you will find yourself being held back. You'll find yourself being held back. And I can kind of talk about my own chart in this regard. Something you're always figuring out new things. I've studied my chart and astrology for a long time, and it's just, amazing how new insights can just pop into your mind just like that after so much time. So I have in my chart a Sun-Jupiter aspect that's a square. Now, some astrologers, I've heard talk about like, oh, well, if it's a benevolent planet, benefic planet like Jupiter, and the sun is a very positive, or has, it's the sun. It's like a bright, warm planet as well, opposed to some of the more, malefic planets like Pluto and Mars and Saturn. Whereas a square is considered like this tense, possibly challenging aspect, when it's these brighter, warmer planets, It'd be like, oh, well, a square is really not much of a challenge. It could just be like this energy buildup. And from what there's aspects of that that are true. Maybe there's like a less harshness because of the nature of the planets involved. But at the end of the day, in my chart example with this Sun Jupiter square, there's a challenge there. And that's what I see in charts. If there's a square, there's a challenge, there's something in the dynamic between the communication of the two planets or points that needs to be resolved. So in the case of me and a Sun Jupiter square, Jupiter is the part of somebody's chart that really is the point of abundance and fulfillment in life, right? And like it's really the access point for that. And of course the Sun is who you're showing up as in the world. Like, what is your role in the world? Who are you? What's your persona? And this square for me, I feel like where I'm at in life right now is coming to a place where I'm unlocking that square. Like that energy is finally, in more recent, maybe the last couple of years, starting to thaw. You could almost think of like a square as like a frozen part of the river that maybe the water is not going as smoothly through. And the communication between my Sun and Jupiter, in my case, being a Capricorn Sun, has this tendency to want to be kind of solitary and take care of everything by myself, this lone wolf way of doing things. Now, my Jupiter is in the house, the 11th house of friends and community. So, without going too far into depth here, essentially, the marriage of my Sun and Jupiter really has to do with letting friends help me with my personal Capricorn ambitions, but in a way that's also mutually aligned with my friends and my community and in service, and allowing help and friendship and partnership, and not having to just do everything myself. Because guess what? I have weaknesses. I have gifts and I have weaknesses. And like, so for example, I just finished a very long process of recording an album, a musical album, and I am a terrible sound engineer, which means like actually recording. Don't ask me to mix a track on Logic or any of this technical side of things. Like, I'm just not that interested in. I've learned some of it over the years and can do some basic stuff. But if I tried to do all that by myself, terrible. I met a friend who is incredibly talented on that side of things. So, which allowed me to focus on my natural abilities, which is just writing the songs, playing the songs, making the music. And then I just like gave him that other side of things, this technical, actually recording them into tracks, and making the album, like all of that, the teamwork, working with other musicians. I tend to like to do a lot of solo work, even just, solo singer-songwriter stuff. But no, let's like actually have fun and play music just for the fun of it with other musicians. And yeah, partnership, collaboration. So that's what I've seen in my own chart about, oh wow, like, okay, that's kind of finally breaking free. My Sun and Jupiter I'm accessing my Jupiter. If I had that insight, as a kid or even earlier on, maybe I could have honed in on that and saved myself some slow, trudging up the mountain, and could have maybe found an easier path through the wilderness. But everybody has their own path, and these realizations come when they will. That said, this is one of the reasons that I am such a proponent of studying astrology and understanding your own chart. And I do offer that to people. going through your chart reading, and it's essentially a combination of like astrologically informed counseling is how I describe it, and wherever you're at in life, seeing where we can really point at those strengths to hone in on and maximize, and then also see where some of the blocks and challenges where the river is not quite flowing as strongly, which can even unlock your strengths even more. So in conclusion, I think honing in on the strengths and weaknesses question, well, everybody's different, everybody's chart's unique. In general, I think start with your strengths, build confidence, find out what really lights you up, but then don't go too far without looking at the stuff that you might prefer to avoid because you're not as good at. Because eventually that stuff will hold you back. Like me, just in general as a person, but also just working on music, I could only go so far as the lonely Capricorn sun, trying to just like hit my head against a wall recording my own music. I needed help, and now that's resulted in something I'm very proud of. So yeah, everybody has their own way of doing it, but yeah, I say hone in on the strengths, figure out those natural gifts, inspire yourself, and then that will give you confidence to be able to look at the areas that need some assistance and help and focus. And just being real, like, hey, like we're humans, we have insecurities, confidence is important. And you build confidence by knowing yourself and learning where your strengths reside, also knowing your limits, because there's so many analogies you could make. Like if you want to be a confident driver on the road, you kind of want to know the limits of your car and your driving abilities as well. Like you got to know, okay, well, how fast can I go around this corner? You don't want to be like, I'm not exactly sure, before you see what I'm saying there. Knowing your limits as well as knowing your abilities is what helps lead to confidence, and just having that security and that peace flowing through the river of life. So again, my email, if you have any interest in working with me in that regard, can be found in the description for my channel here. And yeah, I'll leave this video at this point, I think. And thanks for stopping by. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.